Hello and welcome. You are watching The Noise on Dungeons & Dragons Online. Now what The Noise is it's sort of a first look slash in-depth look slash tutorial about games. What The Noise is not is it's not a review. I will not be talking about what I don't like about games in The Noise, and I'll be talking about what I like about them, obviously, but that's not really the point. The point is to give you a good, solid, in-depth look at a game and see if it's something you might be interested in playing. And so the game I'm looking at today is Dungeons & Dragons Online. Now, I'm going to be spending a lot of time in this first video. In fact, all of this first video is going to be character creation, which is not normal, but in Dungeons & Dragons Online, it's pretty doggone necessary. So, obviously, I'm going to click on Create. Now, notice I have 0 of 2 characters down here on a free account. There are several servers, and you can have 2 characters on each. Buy account upgrades, we'll look at that in a minute, and then we'll look at it much more extensively in a later video. If I click on Create, first you get your style. Now, what it's doing is it's kind of funneling me. It's kind of assuming that I'm new and asking me what type of character I want to play. So, a melee combatant, a spellcaster, or a specialist. Now, one thing that I can tell you is that the melee combatants are probably going to be the easiest to start with for a new player. If you've never played Dungeons & Dragons Online, and if you've never played Dungeons & Dragons Pen and Paper. Now, this was based entirely on the Pen and Paper. I believe it's the 3rd edition rule set. And so then once you've chosen your style, melee combatant, then you have your class, your fighter, barbarian, paladin, and monk. Now here we have a buy now, and if you every time you see this, it means you don't have access to it unless you buy it. And I will be spending some time in a later video discussing the store and how to navigate it. It's a very reasonable costing game as long as you kind of know how to navigate it. So I will be discussing that in depth in a later video. But moving on. So you see down here where it says solo ability, very good. So fighter, good. Barbarian, good. Paladin, very good. I don't know how accurate these are, really. I don't know what the difference between good and very good is. I do know that the ones that say that they're very difficult, you probably want to avoid if you're brand new to the game. So I'm going to take the Paladin, which is very good, and then I go to Path. Now these are presets. So it'll give me preset roles and then the description. And all of these are saying very good to solo. But one thing that I know about Dungeons & Dragons Online is that the more damage you can do, kind of the better off you are. You do want the defense, which of course a Paladin's going to have just automatically. But high damage makes you kill things faster, which makes you survive longer. And so these ones, this is the only Paladin that says these they take the fight to the enemy and use their weapons and divine abilities to mercilessly destroy any evil they encounter, which probably makes this, I would say, the most likely candidate for the easiest of the fighter classes, of the, sorry, I should say the melee classes to solo. So that's the one I would choose if I was new and wanted to do close range combat. Now, I've actually decided to start a fighter, ranger, rogue build. The fighter and ranger for fighting and such, and the rogue also because I plan on soloing a lot. Rogues are very good to have because you're going to run into a lot of traps, secret doors, things of that nature that rogues specialize in. And you can multi-class into them to kind of take care of that for you if you are soloing or planning on solo a lot, which, by the way, I don't recommend. This is very much a team-oriented game. But if you do want to do some soloing, having some rogue skills is not a bad option. Now, if you do decide to multi-class, I strongly recommend that you Google the class that you're looking for. You can have up to 3 classes on one character, and even if you're familiar with the pen and paper, that will give you a huge advantage, but there's still a good chance that you might end up with a character you don't like so well. So, what you can do is you can go Google just about anything. Like, you can go to Google and type in fighter, cleric, build, DDO. And you will likely come up with someone who's a lot smarter than you, who's been playing the game for a lot longer, who's built a fighter-cleric combination that works really well. And I would recommend doing that. Now, I've actually done that. I'm going to be basing my build off a fighter-ranger build that I found, and then a second build that I found that throws in some rogue. And I'm kind of going to try to take the best of both of those builds into something that I think will be fairly easy to solo. So I picked my style, I picked specialist, because I'm going to start with the rogue. And then I go Rogue. Notice it says Solo Ability Challenging. Path. Now this is where I'm not going to take a path because I'm going to customize it. Again, it says this option is recommended only for advanced players. Definitely that is a true statement. So just be aware that you don't want to do this unless you're working off somebody else's build or unless you've had some experience. One common statement among people who've played Dungeons & Dragons for a while is that they really jacked up their first attempt at creating their own character. So just be aware. Now you'll notice in race a lot of these are buy now. For the most part, people just think that drow elves are cool, so they want to buy them. You know, I think the only class that really is kind of an I win button is the Warforged. They kind of made the Warforged, it seems, to make a class that's a little, or a race, sorry, that's a little more like how other MMOs play. So it makes it a lot easier. Warforged are very survivable. They just kind of make everything a little bit easier. At least that's my understanding. I haven't played one. That's what I'm told. So Warforged would be one that you might be interested in buying right off. But otherwise, I would say, you know, not really worth it unless you really just like to roleplay and you like the idea of a half-orc. They do have, of course, every race has its advantages and disadvantages. But at any rate, I'm going with Elf. Okay, now look actually takes you into where you put in your stats. Now you'll notice, and this is based on, gosh, I think it's based on your race. You know, I'm going to check real quick. It's been so long since I created a character, I'm not quite sure. So yeah, it actually is based on your race. So your human has base stats of 8. People who know Dungeons & Dragons well are already, like, thinking I'm pathetic. So, because again, it's based purely on the Dungeons & Dragons rule set. But I'm going to choose an elf. Now, you kind of want to take a look at the races right off the bat, because you have some deciding to do. Now, the deal is the different races, as we learned, the different races have different points and different stats. The humans are a base 8, so everything is 8 all across the board. Now, you get to spend, you have 28 points to spend, and you get to spend 6 prior to the point increase. So, like for instance, so you start with an 8, you spend a point, you have a 9. You spend a point, you have a 10. Okay, once you get up to 14, once you've spent 6, now anything above that will cost 2. So you'd have to spend 2 points to get to level 15 from 14, to get to 15 stat from 14 if you started with a base 8. So if you have a base 6 in something, that's going to be a race that, you know, if you need that stat, like clerics need wisdom, so if you wanted to play a cleric, you probably wouldn't want to play something that had a really low wisdom score. So you want to keep that in mind. Now, the difficulty for me is I want so many different things. Now, you can buy 32-point builds, but I'm just playing the free, so I only have 28. And so there's so many things I want that I'm kind of debating on whether I'm going to get closer to what I want with a dwarf or with an elf. But I decide on the male elf. I have to have a high dexterity. I have to have a wisdom of 12. All right, and then I need a strength that's decent. Constitution is your hit points and fort saves, and it's a very important stat for any solo build. So I want that as high as I can, but here's the problem, is I also need intelligence for my rogue abilities. If I wasn't speccing in rogue, I wouldn't really need anything on intelligence. So this is where I get hosed, because I have to have 12, I have to have 16. I'd like a 14 here, or a 16 here, and a 14 here, but I also want a little bit of intelligence for my rogue abilities. So, and also I'm going to be doing a little bit of spell casting probably. So it's a little bit of a mess here. Kind of wishing I had that 32-point build, but I'm just playing a free character. I guess I'll just do it. I'll take that down to 9, but I still can't raise that, so I'll take my strength down to 15. Take my constitution, put that back at 10. 15 strength, 16 dex, 13 constitution for a little survivability, and 10 intelligence probably is going to be the way to go. And then I click next. And now you have your skills. Now, Dungeons & Dragons, unlike most other games, skills are kind of... It's amazing how much they really actually do stuff. Like, for instance, I had a half-elf one, or a hobbit once that I was playing, a halfling, or whatever they're called in this game. I had one once that I was playing, and I didn't take any jump skill, and I got to a point in the dungeon where the buddies that I was questing with, they jumped over this big pile of boxes that I couldn't. And so I was stuck behind, and I had to go the long way around, and it just turned into a disaster because I was too short and didn't have any jump skill, and I couldn't jump them. And so jump actually matters a lot. And so everything in here matters. It's, you know, your swim skill will come into play. It will matter. Your strength also helps your swim. So everything interplays together really nicely in this game, and it really matters. And that's one thing I think one of the reasons why this game has never done terribly well in the first place in terms of population is because in the first few levels you simply have no idea how much everything plays together and how much everything matters. And once you start really discovering the complexities of this game, it's really darn impressive. So at any rate, this is where things, if you're not taking a build that's preset for you, things start becoming pretty confusing because you really have no idea what you're doing. Hopefully I've done something okay here for the build that I'm doing, and then we're going to next. Again, I'm following a plan. I've been playing Dungeons & Dragons for a while, but you really gotta kind of study it and know your stuff if you want to do your own thing. Now, these are feats, and I'm looking for the least dragon mark of shadow. Now, feats can be actions, clickable actions, or they can be passive. The general rule of thumb is if it's a square, then it's a clickable action, whereas then I'm talking about the icon for the feat. If it's not a square, then it's probably a passive. Least dragon mark of shadow, and what that does, it bestows on me a +2 bonus to my hide skill. So it really enhances my roguishness. And I'm just going to slide that over like this. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and click next. And here are my skills. And I believe I'm pretty much done. This is kind of an overview of everything that I have. Go ahead and click next. And here's where I actually, it said look right off the bat, but here's where I actually get to choose the look. And you can see this is a fairly normal type of character creation. You have your different styles. If I was reviewing the game, I would say this isn't such a great option, but what I do like about it is that A, it's old, and B, being old, it's actually fairly decent. It's what you would expect from an older game. So I'm going to find a color. I don't know why. I kind of have a good feeling about being white-haired, but maybe I'll go green. I don't think I've ever had a green-haired character. I'm not sure. Kind of makes him look a little rangery, maybe, to be green. Eyes. Give him a green eye color. He's just going to be... You know, it's not easy being green. But we'll see if I can pull it off with this character. Lips. Facial detail. I always like giving my characters scars. They look a little bit swarthy. Skin color. I probably don't want him too dark, because he is an elf. And not a drow elf. That kind of makes him look really foresty, though, doesn't it? Maybe I'll go with that. Of course, you can always randomize. Character name. I always hate coming up with names. I really like when you can just randomize a character name. It makes me happy. I'm going to go ahead and make him... neutral. Just make him a true neutral. You will get items where that matters. So, you know, there will be items that will only be for lawful good characters, things of that nature. So that does come into play. Everything in this game will come into play, I promise you that. There's really nothing that's just completely throwaway. So we'll make him, I wonder if I can make him Fly Molo. Fly Molo. I doubt it. It is very unlikely. Fly Molo app. Molo. Look at that. Nobody has Fly Molo, so I'm going to be Fly Molo App Molo. And the dragon mark feature that I took, by the way, is what gave me this thing on my face. I wouldn't have had that had I not taken that dragon mark feat. So that's it for part 1 of the noise on DDO, and I'll be taking a look at actual gameplay in the next video. I hope you'll join me. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.